Good evening and welcome to the latest installment of the RO Sports Show brought to you by First Health Orthopedics. I'm your host, Matt Harrelson. To my right, our Ross regulars, Jeremy McKenzie, and on the other end, Russell Parker. So usually around this time, over the past few weeks, we would start with Raider football, but of course they were on a bye this week. And obviously with the aftermath of Hurricane Florence, whether they're going to play this week's game against Purnell Sweat is still up in the air. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. So, long story short, we figured we'd go ahead and start with college football this week. So let's begin right there on the college gridiron and take a look at last week's picks. So first off, before we delve into the Russell, what's the score right now overall?
Well, overall, all right. First of all, Jeremy, he did win last week between the three of us.
Okay.
Specifically this week, so he has 6 points. Me and you have 4 points, Matt. But overall, this guy right here is winning by 1 point. But I have 16. Jeremy has 15, Matt has 14.
So it is still a tightly contested match. So.
But, this guy's leading, so.
All right, well, a 2-point difference can be made up just this very week. But before we jump ahead, let's look back at Week 3's picks. And we'll start with perhaps the biggest matchup from this past weekend was LSU versus Auburn. Russell, you were the, you were the only one that took LSU. Mm-hmm. Ended up, of course, getting that right. So what was your thinking behind that pick?
I mean, LSU is certainly on a roll. They've been showing a lot of momentum recently, and it doesn't surprise me that they won this game because, I mean, Auburn can overlook opponents. They've done it in the past. It doesn't surprise me that they did it here. But the fact I was kind of impressed that LSU did do it in Auburn Stadium.
Yeah.
That's a pretty tough crowd, even for Auburn. So, I feel like LSU, they've got a good, solid team this year that could even give Alabama a run for its money this season later on. I think it's going to be a build up to a really big match later on this season. I think LSU can go all the way undefeated if possible.
I mean, at this point, why not? Of course, I figured that I would take the Tigers and be okay. And technically I was, even though it was the wrong Tigers, because Jeremy and I both took Auburn to win this matchup, and we were both wrong on there. But was there any particular reason why you chose Auburn? Just thought they were the better team, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think because of the defense side of the ball, which they could have a lot of turnovers on that. And I thought LSU might have had a day where it just wasn't, could have been falling off. And I think what it was, LSU brought the A game to that and gave Auburn a run.
Well, I mean, this game could have gone either way. Either team could have won this. And this is a prime example of something that we talked about is how the SEC and specifically the SEC West are going to sit here and beat up on one another throughout this season. I think this is prime example.
And this game was like 1 point difference. It came into a field goal, so it really could have gone either way.
As those matchups against those teams tend to do, especially with those defenses. But, Russell, you were right on this one, so that's the 1 point that you're ahead right now is that game. Moving on, so Boise State, who at the time came in as number 17, I believe it was, against Oklahoma State, going to Stillwater to face at the time what was number 24 Oklahoma State. I took Boise State, and I remember thinking to myself, all right, this could be their opportunity to jump even closer to the top 10 this early in the season as one of those group of 5 teams. Obviously, though, they went into Stillwater and couldn't get it done. But, Jeremy, you picked the Cowboys. So anything surprise you? I mean, obviously, you were expecting Oklahoma State to pull this one out.
Yeah, because I was looking at Oklahoma pull an upset against Boise State, but I looked at Oklahoma State, didn't bring what they need to bring to the table, so they took a loss.
Yeah, and was your thinking the same as mine, Russell, that this could be a chance for an outside team to jump up?
I think Boise State still has a decent team. Probably not the standards that we expected them to be prior to this week. So, I think they had a lot of momentum going into this game. It just, I don't know, Oklahoma State is playing at home there, and they got the crowd advantage there. So.
And we're going to take a sneak peek at the top 25 when we get done making all these picks for next week. But Oklahoma State is now 15th after beating Boise State. Perhaps Boise State, if they'd have won this game, might have been in the 12-13 range, somewhere like that. Again, knocking on the door right outside the top 10, which, in my opinion, would be almost a little unprecedented this early in the season, but missed opportunity for the Broncos. Moving forward, a big matchup for you guys. Of course, Alabama taking on the Ole Miss Rebels. We all three convincingly and smartly took the Roll Tide to roll, and they sure did that, right?
I mean, Ole Miss, they've beaten Alabama a few times. They have done it recent.
Yeah, recent.
So it doesn't surprise. I actually was kind of taken back by how badly they beat them at the end of the halftime. It was already bad. So So maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but Alabama is certainly on a roll here.
Yeah, Bama just blowing out Ole Miss. Anything surprise you there?
No, Bama just keep bringing that A game.
Yeah, I mean, I thought maybe this would be a little bit closer than it actually turned out to be. What was it, like 62-7 or something at one point?
I believe this is the first time that Alabama, or at least in recent history, that they've been able to keep teams below, I think, 10 points, something like that,
Yeah.
or 20 points or something like that.
I mean, you guys may disagree with me, but I feel even this early in the season, we're already on a crash collision course for Bama Clemson round 8 or 9 or whatever it is now. It feels like. Moving on, though, another big matchup between two ranked teams from this past week, Ohio State against TCU. And I believe this was actually in Arlington on a neutral site, so almost in TCU's backyard. Was that the reason why you took them, Russell?
My main reason was the fact that Urban Meyer was not at this game. So I did not think that this would be the toughest game for not having Urban Meyer there. So I think TCU had a good opportunity to win this game. Unfortunately, it just didn't happen for them.
Yeah, and Jeremy, you and I both took the Buckeyes. Urban Meyer not being there, make any difference to you when you made your pick?
No, it would have made a difference even despite Urban Meyer's suspension. The guys was going to still come out to play, put up points, do what they had to do, and they got it done.
Yeah, and I kind of said that I didn't really expect Urban not being there to make any difference. I said once the 3-game suspension was over with, Ohio State would come out of it being 3-0. That's exactly what we're seeing. Now, the Buckeyes did have a fight going into halftime. In the second half, they were able to pull away because, quite frankly, I think they just have more talent than TCU, and I think that's the reasoning behind why I decided to make the pick that Urban not being there wasn't going to make any difference because all the talent was there to begin with. And then finally, the one of the big matchups about 10 years ago, however, but still a pretty big matchup, USC against Texas down in Austin. Let's see. You and I both, Russell, we took USC.
Yeah.
Jeremy, you took Texas. And the Longhorns pulling out what I would say would be an upset, right?
Yeah.
I would say so, too.
Yeah, I mean, Texas obviously didn't do well against Maryland, lost them the first game of the season. Took a little bit of effort to have to beat Tulsa last week, which, of course, made us all wonder if they'd be able to beat the Trojans. That's mainly why I took USC, because I thought they're just more talented of the two teams.
Yeah.
I guess Texas had the more willpower, and Texas isn't a terrible team. They've got some talent down there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, moving on, let's look at our locked-in picks as we move through these. So, for last week, I had for locked-in Michigan over SMU, and I was correct in that one. Michigan was able to handle SMU, who's played a really tough schedule already. Lost to TCU earlier this year. But anyway, took the loss to the Wolverines, got me a couple points there. Jeremy, you had Oregon over San Jose State. They were able to take care of business handily as well. And then finally for locked in, actually both of y'all had Oregon.
Yeah.
Both had Oregon over San Jose State. So I think it's pretty easy sometimes to make these picks. I know last week, Russell, you made yours a little difficult on you by taking Kentucky. But that's the reason we try to take some of these that we know are going to be locked in 100%. Now, on the flip of that coin, our upset alerts not so well this season, or this week, I should say. It's tough for me to read this, but let's see. I've had
Utah and Washington.
Utah over Washington. That is correct. Yeah, so coming into this game, Utah actually, stat-wise, had the number 1 defense in the country. I thought maybe that might be enough to upset the Huskies. It was not, and perhaps Washington back on that march towards the college football playoff. Jeremy, what about your upset this week?
UPEC did beat Tennessee. A little small school down in El Paso, Texas, known to be a basketball school, but they kind of surprised me when they beat the Volunteers.
All right, how about you, Russell?
I would say over Oklahoma. Of course, Oklahoma is a lot better team. I actually thought Ohio State could give them a run for their money, but Iowa State just couldn't seal the deal.
Yeah, I know we talked about how Iowa State is definitely one of those teams that can jump up and bite you if you're not ready for them. But Oklahoma, another one of those teams that's marching steadily towards the college football playoff once again. So, scratch all that, and this will be my comeback week. So, let's take a look at Week 4 picks. The first one we've got on the slate will be Notre Dame at Wake Forest. So, who you guys got?
I think this is an obvious one here. Notre Dame.
All right.
Notre Dame, because I just feel like Notre Dame going to come in, do what they have to do, and it's going to be a blowout.
Notre Dame is obviously the higher ranked of the two. I'm taking the Irish, but I'm not going to be so quick to do it. Wake Forest has a really good quarterback that's coming back this week from suspension. It was the reason why week 1 I chose Tulane to upset Wake Forest because that quarterback wasn't going to be there. He's back from suspension. nonetheless, Notre Dame is the more talented of the two teams, so they should walk into Wake Forest and get the W there. Moving on, so Texas A&M is flying to Alabama. Texas A&M coming in at number 22. Bama, of course, at the number 1 spot. And maybe goes without saying, but who are you guys taking for that game?
Roll Tide, Alabama.
Roll Tide, Alabama.
All right, so Clemson went into College Station, barely got out of there with a 2-point lead. Do you think A&M gives Bama any trouble?
I say this preseason, Texas A&M's going to have a good season. This could be a game where they could win it. I just don't think they can finish it all the way out through all 4 quarters. I think Alabama can finish it all the way through in this game.
What do you think, Jeremy? Is Jimbo Fisher any kind of factor in this game?
I don't think it's not going to – I think not, because Alabama's going to come in, play great defense and play offense, but I think he's not going to match the expertise what Alabama already got.
And you bring up Jimbo Fisher, Alabama's Nick Saban has never lost to his former coaches, so
Yeah. Eventually it's going to happen, though.
this won't happen.
All right.
I think Kirby Smart will be the one to do that.
Well, I mean, I'm picking Bama as well because, as I mentioned last week, I'm going to continue to pick Bama as long as they're on here, as long as they keep winning, and I don't really see them losing at any point in the near future. Moving out west, we got a big Pac-12 matchup. Stanford heading to Oregon. The Cardinal coming in at number 7 overall in the country. The Ducks moving their way up to number 20. That's going to be at 8 o'clock on Saturday. Who you got, Cardinals or Ducks?
Well, I think it was 2013 I became a Stanford Cardinal fan because they beat Oregon to knock them out of the national championship contention to get Alabama back in. So I'm going to go with Stanford here again.
All right. How about you, Jeremy?
I'm going with the Oregon Ducks. Quack, quack.
Yeah, you seem to have been on the Ducks bandwagon since before the season started. I think you had them pick come out of the Pac-12. Stick with it, man. However, I'm going to take Stanford to get the W here.
Because I think this is going to be a game where Justin Herbert's going to come in, and I think he's going to show off what he can do against Stanford.
And he's good. And the deciding factor could be that they're in Oregon. They're up in Eugene. I just think this is a scenario where Costello at quarterback and Bryce Love is going to be too much to handle for that Oregon defense that, quite frankly, hasn't played any defense in the last decade. So, one more matchup, actually 2 more matchups. We got Kansas State heading to number 12 West Virginia. As we know, we mentioned before, Kansas State, one of those teams that can come into your house and knock you off if you're not careful. But who you taking, the Mountaineers or who?
I'm going to have to go to Mountaineers because, West Virginia, they've been showing a very solid game week in, week out. I think they can get the job done and continue on in the Big 10 Big 12, excuse me. So I think that they're going to go on and beat Kansas State in this one.
All right, so who you got, Mountaineers or Wildcats?
I got the Mountaineers because I think this is going to be a game where the Mountaineers come in and move a lot of stuff that they move what they need to do on offensively, and I think the quarterback is going to have another great game.
Yeah, Will Grier right now, their starting quarterback, is still sitting on top of all the Heisman hype. As far as a lot of the stat boards, he's still there. I don't expect him to move off, even though Kansas State has a pretty good defense. I think that Will Grier at quarterback and David Seals V, one of the top wide receivers on the outside, going to be too much for the Kansas State defense. And then finally this week, another big SEC matchup. We've got Florida heading to Tennessee. So up in Knoxville, who you got?
I don't know if you call this one big. It's like medium.
Yeah, it is
SEC.
still a big game in the SEC.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with Florida because I'm not picking Tennessee.
Okay.
I'm going for the Gators.
I'm going to go for the Gators too, even though this is at Tennessee. Neither team seems like they are as good as they should be. And I think we've been saying that now for 4 or 5 years at least, especially about Tennessee.
So much hype preseason.
So much hype for both of these. This might be like the letdown game, if you will, as in the game may be awesome.
This is like the UNC ECU game
Kinda,
for SEC
yeah.
standards.
But again, I'm going to take the Gators. I have no particular reason. I would just as well see this get rained out. But I think Florida is at least maybe a half step above where the Volunteers are.
No.
But again, a lot of turnover, it seems like, coaching-wise at these schools, trying to get back to their former glory years when Philip Fulmer was at Tennessee, Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer back in Florida. Don't know if either one of these programs is going to be able to get back to that. So let's move on to our locks in for this week. So who you got, Russell?
I've got Ohio State locking in on Tulane. I think now Urban Meyer back is going to be just such a sweep for all of them there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would expect a big game from the Ohio State offense. Who you got for locked in?
Locked in, I got the Clemson Tigers going to beat the crap out of Georgia Tech.
Yes, I very much could see that happen, although I will say Georgia Tech is one of those funky teams. It's got one of those crazy offenses. and sometimes can create trouble for defenses that don't know what they're looking at. But Clemson's seen them so many times.
Yeah.
I don't expect, especially with that vaunted defense, to have any trouble. I'm taking for my locked in LSU, number 6 now, all the way up to number 6. Is playing Louisiana Tech. I expect this one to be an absolute blowout.
Yeah.
Down in the Bayou. And then for upset alerts, who you got that needs to be on alert this week?
Well, Jeremy, you picked Clemson over Georgia Tech for your lock-in. For my upset alert, Georgia Tech is going to beat Clemson.
All right. And we talked about how Clemson is well known over the last few years for losing one game, and it tends to be against the team that they should beat. Perhaps Georgia Tech could be
I
that
believe
team.
Pitt was one of them a couple years ago, maybe last year. And they also lost to Syracuse, so anybody can beat them at this point. It seems like that's surprising.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jeremy, who you got for your upset this week?
For upset alert, I'm going to say UNC Charlotte is going to beat UMass.
All right, going smaller schools. For my upset this week, I'm taking Iowa over number 18 Wisconsin. Of course, Wisconsin coming off that huge loss to BYU. I know Wisconsin was the Big Ten East best hope at trying to get into the college football playoff. That may be dashed now, but I think Iowa is there to pick up the pieces, so to speak, and will turn around and give Wisconsin 2 losses in a row. Then, real quick, guys, who you got for your big man on campus this week, your top performers?
I'm going to have to go with Tua again because he's just been on fire, and him and Jalen Hurts kind of going back and forth in this past Ole Miss game. But Tua has been showing as the better quarterback at this point.
So as of right now, between those two, I know Saban said he was going to try to start both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Has that been the case? Is that experiment been working? I mean, obviously they're beating teams up, but I mean,
yeah. Well, obviously wherever Nick Saban's doing right now is definitely working, and I think he's going to continue to do it. I think Tua is probably the better quarterback at this point, but I think Saban, Hurts has put so much in for Alabama that I think that's the reason why he wants them to stay around because Hurts has done so much for that team there. So
absolutely, and Tua's been on a lot of Heisman hype boards too. A lot of big boards. Matter of fact, I think Will Greer and him have been. Tua's kind of moved up there with him on that list. You got yours pulled up, Jeremy, for your big man on campus?
My big man on campus is number 13 Cole McDonald again from University of Hawaii. Last week when Hawaii beat Army, he had 321 passing yards with 2 touchdowns, and this is a guy that a lot of people better be looking for because he's leading the nation in passing yards. So you might look at it as a dark horse candidate.
Yeah,
for the Heisman.
It's been a while since Hawaii's had a really good quarterback. I think it was what was his name, Colt Brennan, that was there for a while that slung it around in June Jones's offense, and maybe the Warriors are back. My big man on campus, another guy that not many people talk about, is Alan Bowman, a freshman quarterback for the Texas Tech Red Raiders. He completed 43 passes this week for 605 yards.
Wow.
That's
5 passing touchdowns, and the Red Raiders win over Houston 63-49. So no defense played in that game, even though perhaps the best player in the nation, defensive tackle Ed Oliver, plays right there in Houston. Didn't seem to be able to stop Alan Bowman at all. So that's our big man on campus. And then real quick, guys, a quick look at the top 25. And we're going to get into this later on in the show with our Ross poll. But Georgia coming up and jumping Clemson into the number 2 spot. Let's not delve too much into it, but does this surprise you at all?
To me, it does. And I know we'll get into it a little bit later, but yeah, it definitely does.
All right, what about you? Does it surprise you? Because I thought Clemson should stay at number 2. Neither team lost.
Yeah, I think, that got surprising because I'm looking at from a scenario why you put Georgia over Clemson.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Kirby, well,
it's like a curveball. Where
like
did this come from?
Yeah, where it's come from. So.
And again, we'll delve into that later on in the show. But real quick, LSU is now sitting at 6. I mentioned that earlier. Auburn only dropped to number 9. So they're the top one-loss team in the country right now. Perhaps in the driver's seat down the road, if a one-loss team is able to get in, could be Auburn. And then mentioned Boise State lost this week. So now that means the question is, who is the top group of 5 team? Back to their old tricks, UCF sitting there at number 16 at 2-0. And Boston College getting in this week in the top 25. They're going in at number 23 at 3-0. So never thought I'd say again Boston College in the top 25. I think the last time that happened, Matt Ryan was under center for the Eagles. So.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe NC State's actually receiving some votes right now.
NC State they received 10 votes. They'd be 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. 30. They'd be 34th overall.
34th. So that's the top team in North Carolina right now.
Actually, Duke.
Duke is the rank.
Duke received 61 points this week. NC State received 10. So Duke would actually be 27th in the nation, believe it or not.
Wow.
So Duke, number one team in the Carolina.
That was more of a basketball team.
I can't even get that out of my mouth. That's going to do it for this week's college football section. Of course, just like we have been, we'll come back this time next week, take a look at this week's picks, see how far ahead I am finally, and then move on further into the season. Yes, time to talk smack. Of course, we'll also come back with some Raider football next week. But moving on, after we come back from the break, we're going to take a look at the NFL. Another week in the books. Take a look at who had big games this week. Some teams that are 2-0, including all three teams from the state of Florida, which, depending on how you look at it, is a big deal or not a big deal. We'll talk about that plus much, much more when we come back to the RO Sports Show.
At Richmond Community College, we can prepare you for a high-skill, high-paying career in a variety of fields. From business to education, engineering, utilities, healthcare, criminal justice, information technology, and human services. At Richmond Community College, we can save you thousands of dollars on tuition through our university transfer programs that provide a seamless transition to universities and colleges throughout North Carolina. At Richmond Community College, we are always developing new courses and programs in response to the communities we serve. We offer day, evening, and online courses, and you can now complete 5 curriculum programs entirely online. At Richmond Community College, we believe in helping you prepare for a better life. Richmond Community College. Local college, big impact.
McNair Auto Sales is the place to buy your pre-owned car, truck, or van. To be the best, it takes big selection, friendly staff, and great pricing. We guarantee a no-hassle buying experience, and financing is available right on site. So come see us today. We're located at 1026 East Broad Avenue in Rockingham. And remember, with over 40 years of experience, you know McNair is the name you can trust.
Hayden Construction has 2 new homes under construction at 2 distinct locations, 125 Crystal Court in Carolina Hills and on Robberdale School Road. Both feature incredible floor plans and distinct features inside and out. Hayden Construction, quality, value, and beauty. Call Jamie Smart at 910-331-5811 or Nicole Hayden at 910-995-0717 today to schedule an appointment. Exit Realty, making dreams a reality.
At Richmond County Hospice, we strive to provide high-quality care to our patients and their families. Whether it's the incredible hospitality at the Haven House or from the comfort of your own home, you can count on Hospice to be there for you. We also offer monthly grief support groups, and our chaplain will be there to hold your hand in prayer. Through our amazing staff and our volunteers, Hospice has made difficult times easier for our community. Call the number on your screen if you feel that you or your loved one may benefit from our services. Richmond County Hospice. Peace, comfort, dignity.
Welcome back to the RO Sports Show. As always, brought to you by First Health Orthopedics, and it's time to move on from the gridiron of college to the gridiron of the professional sports league known as the NFL. So, we obviously are going to touch on the Carolina Panthers and the Washington Redskins. Neither team coming off a very good week. The Falcons, actually, Russell, last week you and I both picked the Falcons to beat the Panthers. Well, let's start here. Jeremy, you weren't here last week, so of course we are going to pick on the Panthers a little bit. Because you weren't able to get your 2 cents in worth. But now looking back, Falcons beat the Panthers 31-24. What happened to the Carolina Panthers?
I did look at the game Sunday, and I looked at a few things that we could have done better in order to beat Atlanta. But one of the things that we did not do was we couldn't stop the run. Many of y'all know that Devontae Freeman's out. And Tevin Coleman took his place, and Tevin Coleman had a career game on that Sunday, which defense could stop him or Julio Jones. But Cam pretty much had a good game, over 300 yards passing. Also, there were some penalties that hurted us in the process, especially with Torrey Smith with those 2 penalties, which that very rare for a wide receiver did not. Very rare for a wide receiver did, forget penalties, but overall, I think what it was, we just totally beat it ourselves. We was competitive, but we just couldn't pull it out. But my standout in that game was Dante Jackson, who did real well against Julio Jones and whatnot, and then actually get a pick out of that.
Now, when I made my pick that the Falcons would beat the Panthers, I said that the deciding factor would be the fact that Greg Olsen wasn't going to be there to be that red zone safety blanket, if you will, for Cam Newton. Do you think him not being there made a difference?
Yeah, I think it did. Even when, and right now, we still got guys that still try to prove themselves. And I didn't see where he didn't throw it to Devin Funchess very well. He was a non-factor because he didn't throw him the ball there. But one thing that impressed me was DJ Moore got his first career touchdown off a 51 slant yard pass. And I think that pretty much would show that DJ Moore could be a factor in down the season to be used as a slot receiver. Yeah. But I'm hearing from Facebook through social media that he was having a hard time learning the playbook. That's why he's not being used like he's supposed to. But now I think now that by him caught that 51 touchdown pass, I think they'll use him more in sub packages or kind of slants, whatnot have you.
So the Panthers decided to keep Olsen on the 53-man roster, which leads me to believe they think he's going to come back sooner rather than later. In the meantime, though, the Panthers obviously want to get back into the win column next week, and we're going to talk about that here later on in this segment. But who needs to step up offensively besides Cam to take the place of Greg Olsen's production?
I think there's a couple of guys I can see who need to step up. One of them needs to be Devin Funchess is one. Dude, you pretty much, out of the Kevin Benjamin trade, we looked at you to be that number one threat.
Right.
And in the past couple of games, you've been non-existent. And I think that's the narrative where Cam needs to start throwing him the ball more, whatnot have you, in order to have success for us. And another person I think that needs to step up, I think it's the offensive line in general.
Okay.
The offensive line in general, because we do have injuries on that line with Trey Turner with a concussion, Matt Khalil's on IR for the first 8 weeks. But I've seen a lot of good things in the offensive line where Taylor Moton has been holding his own, and Ryan Khalil anchoring that line. I think that paid big dividends, whatnot have you. But Christian McCaffrey, I think that's going to be, for him not to run the ball that effective like he wants to, but out of that backfield, he's a monster catching a lot of receptions.
And obviously the NFC South, as it tends to be every year, is going to be tough again this year. So the Panthers are going to need to get back in the win column. As will the Washington Redskins, another local team, if you will. Of course, those that pulled for the Skins, like myself, decided not to flip over when the Panthers got here. But to each their own. However, the Redskins ended up winning pretty handily the first week against the Arizona Cardinals, and it seemed like it was going to be a resurgence from Adrian Peterson. Had a big game that week. This week came back. There was absolutely no run game for Washington. Alex Smith had 292 yards passing, didn't turn the ball over, but also had 0 touchdowns. And the Skins lost to the Indianapolis Colts 21-9. And the Skins only able to muster up 3 touchdowns. So kind of a poor showing for Washington, right?
Yeah, I expected that game to go a lot better for them. Indianapolis probably got a better team than I anticipated. So we could see them higher up in the AFC, right?
Yeah, Colts are.
Yeah, so that wouldn't necessarily hurt Redskins too much to lose to them. But, going forward, they're going to have to definitely figure out what their problems are and get back in the winning column.
Yeah, I was wondering what you would get from Andrew Luck in Indianapolis coming off of the shoulder surgery. Would he be back to normal? Would he be able to put numbers up? He had a decent game. It's just a matter of, Washington, I feel like over the last 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10 years, we're either 7-9, 8-8, or 9-7, and we've kind of been stuck in that funk where kind of like the Hornets have been in the NBA, where you're not good enough to make the playoffs, but not bad enough to get a top draft pick, kind of stuck in that limbo, if you will. And then our game of the week that we picked for last week was the Vikings against the Packers. And lo and behold, we've got 2 ties now in the first 2 weeks of the NFL. Of course, the Browns and Steelers tied in week 1. The Vikings ended up tying with the Packers 29-29. And we wondered if Rodgers was going to play last week. He ended up playing, had a decent game. He went 30 for 42 for 281 yards with 1 touchdown, 0 picks. Kirk Cousins, however, blew it up. One reason that I miss you, Kirk, I wish somehow we get you back in Washington, but he was 35 of 48 for 425 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 pick. So obviously neither team will move up. And Russell, we talked last week about how this was going to be a deciding game later on in the year because these were probably going to be the two teams out of the North fighting against each other. Come to find out, it won't really matter at this point, will
No,
it?
not yet. I guess I have to have a round 2 eventually. I hate ties so much.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I don't like about NFL is ties. I mean, there's got to be a point where you can say there's got to be a clear winner for this. Do how college football does it, where you start at a certain line, you play until somebody has the most points to that point. So,
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. And let's talk about this here for just a second because in the NFL, you would think that, I mean, this is the highest level of football. They would have a way to make sure the game doesn't end in a tie because, quite frankly, who wants to see that?
Nobody.
You know, I mean, you got a beef with ties. I mean, I don't think the average football fan really wants to see their two teams that are playing tie each other, do they?
No, because I was watching the Browns and Steelers go at it last Sunday, and I was like, they're ending the tie. Like, usually back in the day, whoever when the game is in overtime, whoever scored the first touchdown, kick a field goal wins, and that was it.
Which you would think would be how they would do it. I mean, that just makes sense to where, you get a last shot in overtime. Whoever scores first ends it, or you give each team a chance to go back and forth, however you want to do that. But nonetheless, come on, NFL. This is a thing they need to go. I don't know how they need to go about it, whether it's talking to the NFLPA or what. But
it amazes me that in the modern age of football, that's still a thing.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to see that.
I mean, baseball goes into extra innings until the game's over. Basketball plays overtime until somebody wins. College football, as you mentioned, plays until somebody wins.
I think
Even hockey doesn't end in a tie.
I think soccer may be the only one that can do that.
Yeah.
And even then, I still don't
So
like it.
now we're comparing football to soccer, even though technically it should be the other way around historically. But come on, man. Nobody wants to end in a tie. Looking forward to some other games. We're going to hit that here in just a second. But I wanted to touch real quick on some of the teams that are still undefeated. Now, obviously, we're still very early in the season, but 2-0 is 2-0. So first off, 3 teams out of Florida are all 2-0. And if anybody watching wants to come back and fact check us on this, I'd like to know the last time that the Dolphins, Jaguars, and Buccaneers were all undefeated at the same time. I think that has to go back quite a bit of ways. Of course, the 72 Dolphins still holding the record for going undefeated, but they are one of these teams that are 2-0. So we got the Dolphins, the Buccaneers, and the Jags, all 3 from Florida that are 2-0. We've also got the Cincinnati Bengals, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Denver Broncos, and then also from the NFC, the LA Rams. So, first off, let's start here. Any of these teams that surprise you that's 2-0?
I mean, it's not a big deal to me personally that they're 2-0 for all 3 teams. I mean, it's only 2 weeks in. I mean, if this was maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks in, that would make a bigger deal. But this is only 2 games. All 3 teams are going to be pretty strong to start with, I think. So, ask me this next week if they go 3-0.
All right. What about you? Any of these teams surprise you being undefeated?
Only one, because kind of like they've been the laughing stock in the NFL for so long, and that was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But
yeah,
good improvement, what not have you. But other than that, congratulations to the Buccaneers. But I look at it from the standpoint, like Russell said, it's not a big panic for a lot of these teams. It's undefeated because like if it was the 5th or 6th week and all these people still undefeated, okay, we can have a conversation about that then. But let's see what happens down the road.
By saying that you're 2-0 in your state, it's like trying to give some reason to have hype on your team.
Sure,
So,
and I mean, it just happens to work out that way. But I mean, there's other teams that I mentioned. I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals, that one surprises me a little bit that they're 2-0. But I mean, here's the thing: you can't go 16-0 unless you start 2-0. So,
That's right.
But this is still only 2 weeks, so
I hear you.
It's not a big
that's
deal.
like Alabama and Auburn. Okay, yeah, they're 2-0.
Yeah. Right, but I mean, because they're 2-0, they have a better shot at the CFP than a lot of other teams that are 1-1
Right,
or
that's the
0-2.
difference in those 2 sports. So
Yeah. So the Rams are on here. That doesn't surprise me at all. The Rams are 2-0.
No,
Surprise you? I mean, they're on
because
paper.
on paper they got the best roster in the NFL.
Yeah.
And they taking their game to a whole different level, and their defense just second to none.
And then real quick, the Chiefs on here 2-0. I know some people thought that letting Alex Smith get traded to the Redskins and then starting Mahomes would be a mistake. I'm going to take a little bit of credit on myself because I picked a couple weeks ago that Mahomes, I expected big things from him. Basically starting not as a rookie but a second-year starter, and he's been killing it too. So,
Oh, yeah.
the Chiefs being up there 2-0, does that surprise you guys at all?
I think it's a little bit it does, not because I'm very surprised for the defensive side of the ball with Justin Houston and Eric Berry leading the way, and then you're thinking because Marcus Pierce is gone and Derek Johnson's gone to Oakland, that would question your stars on your defense, which they could look at like, okay, we need to panic, we need to do certain things in order to get things going, which they did through draft picks, whatnot have you, and a lot of those guys are coming in and contributing right away, and it's paying big dividends for not only for Coach Reed but for the Chiefs organization as well.
Yeah, and it seems like no matter where Andy Reid goes,
He always going to have success somewhere.
Yeah, he typically has a good team with him. And then finally, the Broncos on here as well. Now, they've been trying to find a quarterback. Perhaps they've got one in Case Keenum. You think he's finally the answer under center?
I think that's going to be like a Band-Aid. I think that's going to be a short-term solution because I'm looking at this signing with Case Keenum. Well, it is Case Keenum.
Yeah.
Case Keenum. We look at Case Keenum as a journeyman quarterback. He's not capable of a starter because because he had that one good year in Minnesota. You think he'll come into an offense like Denver and pretty much can sell everything since the Peyton Manning era has left. But I looked at it because now Case Keenum's in a good situation where you got Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. And I think the defense is pretty strong with Von Miller leading the way.
Yeah, defense is real strong.
And
they got Bradley Chubb out of NC State last year.
So I'm looking at John Elway has done a very good job with this organization, and Coach Joseph in his second year, I think they paying big dividends for this organization. So
I think with this defense, having Case Keenum under center is enough.
Yeah.
It's what you need to be able to get things done. Plus, he's got another pretty good rookie in the backfield in former Oregon Duck running back Royce Freeman, who I think will have a good season. So, we'll come back and see if any of these teams are going to be 3-0 this time next week. Very well could be all of them, could be none of them. So they might all finish 2-14 after this. You don't really know, which we've seen happen in the past. But looking forward to some of the big games. Of course, we want to keep up with the local teams. So let's start with the Green Bay Packers heading up to D.C. to take on the Washington Redskins. Who are you taking?
You know, this is two of the teams I want to pull for in the NFL, so this is going to be a pretty tough one.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeremy. I'll come back to this one.
Green Bay versus Washington.
Yeah.
Green Bay.
All right.
Light it up, A-Rod.
Go ahead.
I'm actually going to have to take the Packers here. The last time these two teams played, I was lucky enough to go up to Washington, and it was my dad's 70th birthday. He's always been a Packers fan since the days of Bart Starr and Lombardi. He'd always wanted to see the Packers play, so I took him up there, and the Redskins ended up winning. But I got my piece out of it because the Skins won. He got to see the Packers play, so I'm going to try to pay it forward here, and I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers over the Redskins.
So, based on this pick here is who I'm pulling for the rest of the season. I'm going to say that right now, and that is going to be Green Bay.
Why? What does that have to do with anything?
I don't know. I like your tradition, the traditions that they got.
Yeah, but what does
Field.
picking this game have to do with the rest of the season?
Because
I'm not taking the Packers
for
for
me,
the rest
I've
of the
always
year.
been. It's like a toss-up between. I don't have an NFL team. It's always been between those two. So this is like the deciding factor for me. I have to pick one. This is going to be.
I
Green
think
Bay.
I know why he's trying. He really telling
Trying
you.
to hedge his bets is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's what he's trying to do in layman's terms. But
The Packers are going to be better than the Skins this year. He's trying to stay on the side of victory.
I'm trying to figure out which one I should be with for the rest of the season. So
That is terrible. That's from a
Well,
fan standpoint. That is awful.
Well, Green Bay did pick up Clinton Dix from Alabama to start with, and that's kind of been with them since then. The Redskins just because my mom pulled for
yeah,
them,
but
so.
you can't. I mean, we've got Bama guys on the Redskins too. You can't base it off of where the Bama players are because they're everywhere.
Well, that's what happened in the NFL draft during that year. I said whoever picks up Clinton Dix, that's going to be my team. It's Green Bay. But then they got rid of him, so
is he still on the team?
I don't know where he went.
Oh, ha-ha's in somewhere else. I don't even know. Where.
I'll find it before
I
the
think
day.
he kind of fanned out a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
And Eddie Lacy as well was a good one.
Yeah.
Well, he couldn't stay underweight though.
Yeah.
All right, so you're going to take Green Bay as well. All right. Well, we've all three got the Packers going into Washington and beating the Skins. Moving forward, Cincinnati Bengals. That game's going to be at 1 p.m. Sunday. Cincinnati Bengals moving into Carolina, going to take on the Panthers. That one's also at 1 p.m. Sunday. Who are you taking?
I think I'm going for Carolina because they need to take this win and hopefully they can pull it out in at home against Cincinnati 2-1.
All right.
I'm going to go with the Panthers. A rarity there.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out which cat do I take, a Panther or a Bengal. I'm going to take the Panthers because they're at home. We just talked about how Cincinnati's one of these 2-0 teams. I don't think they're one of the good 2-0 teams. I think kind of their schedule's dictated where they're sitting. So I've got the Bengals coming in and losing to the Panthers at 1 p.m. on Sunday. And then finally, our pick of the week, going to stay in the NFC South. The New Orleans Saints will be traveling to those same Atlanta Falcons that just beat the Panthers. We'll start with you, Russell. Who you got, Saints or Falcons?
I'm going to go with the Falcons. I'm pretty high riding on them right now. I think they got a really solid season ahead of them.
All right.
I'm going for New Orleans. As long as you got number 9 in the name of Drew Brees, got the weapons around him, and that defense pretty much is improving, I give a shot at the Saints.
Look, I could really care less either way. I'm hoping that the Saints ball out because Drew Brees is my starting quarterback on my fantasy team. But I don't really expect much defense to be played in this game. I expect Brees and Matt Ryan to have pretty big games. I'm going to take the Falcons. I'm still riding high like you are on that beating the Panthers this past week. And they're at home down in the Mercedes-Benz Dome. So I see that spelling victory for the Falcons. All three of those games at 1 p.m. on Sunday. So that's going to do it for football talk right now. We've got a couple more NFL topics that we'll hit later on in Love It or Hate It. In the meantime, we're going to take another quick commercial break. When we come back, we got plenty of NASCAR news with Russell. Plus, like I mentioned, Love It or Hate It. Take a look at the Ross Poll, Big Impact, and so much more when we come back to the RO Sports Show.
At Kyocera, we see your company differently. We see your documents, how they're accessed, what it takes to keep them secure, and how well your workflow is flowing.
Kyocera helps your entire document infrastructure run more efficiently, securely, and cost-effectively.
And what we see is an opportunity to integrate all of it.
Welcome back to the RO Sports Show. As always, brought to you by First Health Orthopedics. Time to leave the gridiron and hit the speedway. So on the asphalt, the guys were over in Las Vegas. Viva Las Vegas. So how'd that turn out?
Well, a lot of gambling was on the line here for sure. Unfortunately for some guys, that did not pay off. Others were rolling high. Keselowski getting his third victory in a row, third one of this season. Team Penske's 500th victory in their organization. That's between NASCAR and IndyCar. So congratulations to Team Penske on that. Of course, Keselowski now locked himself into the next round of the playoffs. He doesn't have to worry about the next two races. He is good to go. Win gets you locked in. So
he could basically sit out the next two races. If
no, he's not allowed to. But yeah, he can ride in the back if he wants to.
Right.
But definitely, we're coming up to this wild card of Charlotte Roval race. Which no driver's ever raced on before. He's going to be okay on that one. He doesn't sweat that one too much. Other guys, they might have to.
All right. So taking a look at how they finished this past weekend in Vegas. So the big three, obviously Keselowski not necessarily in the big three, kind of on the outside.
He's working his way up there.
But the other big three, how'd they turn out this week?
Well, Truex finished third, and he's actually getting back into his mojo again. So Larson finished in second. One guy who continues to finish next to first all the time, it seems like. So he's kind of there. Truex again, third place. Kyle Busch kind of finished out around seventh place. They got seventh in this race. Unfortunately for Kevin Harvick, him and Eric Jones, they had a wreck early in the race. So Harvick finished 39th with Jones behind him in 40th. So next to last for Harvick.
Now, we're going to talk about the playoff standings here in just a minute, but does that finishing almost last, does that hurt him moving forward?
As far as, not being able to collect stage points and those stage points and, of course, winning the race, get those 5 extra playoff points, those will definitely help carry out throughout the rest of the round. So he doesn't collect any of those. So that means for Harvick that he's going to have to kind of battle a little bit more with some of the guys up top, but he's still riding pretty high in the standings.
All right, and I see that your man, Joey Logano, also finished in the top 5. So.
Yeah, as well as his other teammate, Ryan Blaney. So Penske's been on a high roll this week. I could see them continuing on throughout the rest of the playoffs. They're finally hitting all cylinders here where they can actually roll on, maybe make a couple wins for Logano, even Blaney. We'll get into predictions here in a little bit, but I do see a lot of success coming in the near future for those two drivers.
So, in between looking at this past week and moving forward, out of the drivers that you've got on your list here for Vegas, who needed to step up to move forward in the playoffs that didn't?
Larson was actually kind of low in the standings, and that's because he had no win. He's been doing very dominant because he had no wins. He didn't get to collect a lot of playoff points, not enough stage points either. So at the start of the playoffs, he was pretty low on the totem pole there. So, but now he finished second, so that bumped him up way high. As far as the guys who definitely need to step up, that is the Hendrick guys. They definitely need to. Kurt Busch finishing right there on the outside of top 20. Not a good start for him for this season, for this playoffs, and neither for Clint Boyer and Denny Hamlin, who actually came on the radio and said, we are just bad. So that's not good when your driver's saying that.
No, that's not good. Of course, sometimes you just got to come out with it. So, moving forward, looking at the standings after Vegas, where do we sit?
So, honestly, Keselowski would have win. He moves on to the next round. Truex is good to go right now. I'd say he's 65 points ahead of cutoff line. Right now, as it sits at the bottom, Jimmy Johnson is on the outside looking in at 6 points below the cutoff line. Elliott, 9 points below. Eric Jones, 19 points down. And Denny Hamlin rounding out 16th right there, 20 points down. So there's still a lot of wiggle room between 10th and 16th. So I can see situations where coming up, we got Richmond where some guys can definitely pull out of that bubble. But with the Roval, which is a wild card race, it's almost like Talladega in a sense here speaking. So anything can happen there, and that might be the race where Chase Elliott can pull out.
Yeah, things could almost potentially flip upside down after the Roval.
So whoever wins at Richmond, and of course Keselowski, maybe he sweeps both of those two races and makes everybody else panic. So, but whoever wins Richmond and Keselowski, they're going to be set to go for Charlotte.
So just so I'm squared away here, Johnson, Elliott, Jones, and Hamlin, right now we're on the outside looking in.
Yep.
So depending on what happens at Richmond, they could be the first four to go.
After Charlotte would know for a fact if they out.
Okay.
You got 3 races in each round.
Okay, got you.
To determine who gets knocked out.
And then it'll go down to 12, and then to 8, and then to 4.
And the final 4 will race for the championship. First one ahead of those other 3 will be the victory.
Gotcha.
Victor.
All right. So, speaking of Hendrick, though, what's going on with their racing? Because obviously they had a big week.
Yeah, a big week as in a terrible week, I would say. Jimmy Johnson and Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman, not to a great start for them in the playoffs. Hendrick, they could lose all 3 of their drivers in the first round, which will be, I would say, that's kind of
catastrophic.
Catastrophic. Very historic because you don't see that with Hendrick. Hendrick's usually a top tier team, and this season they're not doing it. Jimmy Johnson, I don't think he's going to move on after this race. He continues to struggle, which everybody has hoped that he would actually move up after what we've seen from Chase Elliott at Watkins Glen. And with the chassis adjustment that the Hendrick team did, it hasn't really helped out Johnson too much. With Richmond, he's done okay at that track in the past. I can't really recount times that he's won the race. I know he has, but Charlotte, I just don't see where you can. I'm gonna say this, but you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Right.
And I don't think Jimmy's really up for learning this track right now. So,
so you're thinking he's going to be one of the on the outside looking in guys?
I think so. I think Chase Elliott, though, I think he's going to be a guy who can move on, and it's going to be Charlotte that's going to save him because he's done so well in road courses this season and past seasons that he can actually move on in Charlotte, maybe even win it. He's got the best experience right now as far as road courses go. How he does at Richmond could hurt him, so he may have to win at Charlotte. But right now, I think he'll move on. As far as Alex Bowman, he's done decent road courses, but that's where he's going to have to step up at. But even if he does finish even second place, I think Richmond's going to be a very bad race for him. And he may even wreck out of that race, finish below the top in the back half of the pack, and not have enough points after Charlotte to get him forward. So right now, out of those 3 drivers, I see Chase Elliott moving on.
So from the sounds of it, it sounds like Richmond and Charlotte won't be the main deciding factor, but could be the main turning point as far as looking forward to the playoffs and how this thing's going to shake out. So speaking of that, Richmond, Who you got?
Well, I'm going to pick Kyle Larson on win. I think it's about time he finally won a race this season. I think I picked him
Let
earlier.
me write this down.
Yeah, write it down. But as far as he's done this season, he's been so close to winning just about everywhere. I think he came close to winning at Richmond this past earlier this year. Clint Boyer is a driver I could see that could potentially win this race as well. But I feel like the guys are not going to move on. I did not get to put out my playoff grid on the Sports Show Facebook page, so the guys I think are going to move out of the playoffs from this point will be Eric Jones, Denny Hamlin, Jimmy Johnson, Alex Bowman. So I don't really see those 4 drivers making a big statement. Hamlin might can come up, but with him being 20 points down already, I don't think he can make that up at just Richmond, and then depending on how he does at Charlotte.
Yeah. All right. So kind of similar to the NCAA in basketball, that's your first 4 out right now for the playoffs. So and not to get too far ahead, but obviously the next race is the Roval at Charlotte, which we will be attending.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead and take a stab at who you think's going to win that one?
I'm already riding high on Chase Elliott to potentially win that one. I've seen some testing out there. I don't think Chase Elliott has done as much as some drivers. I know Clint Boyer does not like the track. He's very openly said that he is not a fan of it. He said it's challenging, so he could potentially be a driver. But out of the guys who are going to be out there, Charlotte's in their backyard, so it's almost anybody's game still at that point. It's such a hard race to really put your finger on who's going to win. So I'm going to say Chase Elliott for now, but next week we'll see if that changes.
And even this time next week, you could still be up for grabs because, like you said, after being on this track, it's not like anything that I've recognized on the NASCAR circuit. So, but still, it should be a lot of fun nonetheless. Well, that's going to do it for NASCAR this week. Of course, we'll come back next week, let you know how the guys did in Richmond, and then really start looking towards the Roval at Charlotte, which will be at the end of September. In the meantime, we're going to take our last commercial break, come back and finish the show the same way we always do with our big impacts of the week, take a look at our Ross poll this week, as well as Love It or Hate It, and so much more when we come back to the RO Sports Show.
Willow Tree Antiques and Gifts is all about rustic home decor and gifts. You will always find a variety of unique antiques, vintage, and new items in our shop. Come and see our selection of housewarming, new baby, and wedding gifts. For the man in your life, we have many collectibles, Boker knives, and leather. And ladies love the jewelry, purses, candles, hats, and t-shirts. We also offer a 30-day layaway program. Come and experience shopping at Willow Tree Antiques and Gifts.
Welcome back to the final segment of this edition of the RO Sports Show, brought to you by First Health Orthopedics. Let's finish up the same way we always do. Let's start with our big impacts of the week. Of course, brought to you each week by Richmond Community College, whose motto is Local College, Big Impact. Start with you, Russell. Who's your big impact this week?
Well, of course, this past weekend we've had Hurricane Florence come through. Brad Keselowski is my big impact because him and his wife are doing their Checker Flag Foundation's actually doing like a donation. If you can buy a T-shirt, it's got Carolina Strong on it.
Okay.
And not only will they donate, they're going to donate another shirt out to first responders and everybody who's helping out in the cleanup stuff. So it's really awesome to see that. And he's actually from Michigan, but his wife is from the Outer Banks area, so definitely an impact for them, and they're going to help out with that. So,
and obviously Hurricane Florence, a big pack all across the Carolinas.
Yeah.
What about you, Jeremy? Who you got for this week?
I want to say congratulations to Dante Miller, who's a former Richmond Senior High School standout, playing at the running back position. He had earned Ivy League Rookie of the Week honors and set a school record for the longest run at Columbia University of 83 yards as they beat it Central Connecticut State 41-24. Congratulations again, Dante Miller.
Absolutely. Expect continuous big things for Dante. My big impact this week, I'm going to go to Division I in college football. This past week was the first back-to-back FBS victories for Kansas since 2009. So Kansas finally getting back-to-back wins over Division I teams. Of course, poor Kansas, definitely a basketball school first.
Yeah.
Congratulations to them getting back-to-back wins this week. Moving on, taking a look at our Ross poll, which of course you can get on the conversation every week, usually on Monday nights. Of course, because of the hurricane, we kind of lost track of time with all the tracking that we were doing this week, so we bumped it to Tuesday. But nonetheless, 99 times out of 100 on Monday night, we have our Ross poll, which you can find using the hashtag Ross poll. So this week, we talked about how Georgia found themselves in the number 2 spot in this week's top 25, jumping Clemson, which, quite frankly, I didn't think was right. So we asked the public who should be in the 2 spot behind the Crimson Tide. Should it be Clemson or Georgia? 64% said Georgia to 36% for Clemson. Russell, what say ye?
That's kind of funny that everybody likes to say Georgia, but honestly, even as a SEC fan myself, I don't understand this because Clemson and Georgia both came in and they played some really bad teams. But the team that Clemson played, I can't remember their names, but Clemson did beat a team that was undefeated. Georgia did not. So I feel like Clemson should have stayed where they were. Georgia should have stayed third, but they shouldn't have jumped. It just makes no sense to me. I guess maybe the points only just came up weirdly, but
Perhaps.
yeah.
What about you, Jeremy? Who do you think should be in the 2 spot?
Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, look, Clemson didn't lose, Georgia didn't lose. If Clemson was 2, Georgia was 3, they should both stay there. If one of them lost, I get it, you flip-flop them.
And perhaps maybe if Georgia had beaten a better team, like a bigger team at that would have, made the argument there.
I would even give you that. But Clemson went to A&M, won only by 2, but still that's a tough environment. Georgia went to Columbia and beat South Carolina. So again, to me, those are even wins. And then this past week, both of them blew out some no-name teams, whoever they were playing. So again, I don't really understand why the voters felt the need to bump Georgia above Clemson.
Yeah.
I don't know, SEC, hierarchy, supremacy, whatever you want to call it, perhaps. I don't know, but I don't think right now the SEC should have 1 and 2. I mean, you've already got 1 and 3 and 6 and 9.
Well, obviously that'll get broken up before the end of the season. So.
I know it will be, but still. But again, if you want to get in on the conversation, you can of course do that every Monday night on the RO Sports Show's Facebook page, looking up the hashtag Ross Poll.
I know somebody who's happy about it.
Who?
Brian Till.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, Coach Till, of course, a big Bulldogs fan, so I should have asked him about that. Anyway, I might grill him about that next week. Because last time he was here, he actually threw out a Nick Saban quote, which surprised me. Nonetheless, guys, let's finish up the same way we always do and take a look at our love it or hate it. So, let's start with football. So, college football, I don't know if you guys saw this video. A guy on North Texas faked downing a punt and ended up taking off and scoring for a touchdown against Arkansas. I'm pretty sure North Texas ended up upsetting Arkansas.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if that was upset because Arkansas was pretty mediocre.
Yeah, but Arkansas should be
standards.
beating teams like that.
Yeah.
Love it or hate it.
I love it. And one thing I heard about this, the fallout from this match, from that play, is that NCAA is now trying to figure out a way where they cannot have that happen anymore, which is ridiculous.
Why do that? You know,
I don't understand, but I'm going to say love it because these are brilliant plays.
Absolutely, love it or hate it.
Love it.
I would say love it too. Just, I mean, the thought that this kid had to fake this, knowing
they've been practicing this too.
Yeah, knowing the complacency that a lot of these return teams do, and they just run down there. You know, they almost expect the guy to take a knee or wave it off or whatever. And a lot of times you just go through the motions, and this kid took advantage of it, scored a touchdown. I love it, absolutely.
Before you move on,
Yeah,
can we throw in a I love it or hate it real quick?
sure.
How about this past Sunday, Becky Lynch wins SmackDown Women's Championship? Love it or hate it?
I love it.
Who cares?
I
I'm just
love
kidding.
it.
I'm just kidding. Look, man, I like Becky Lynch. I like looking at Becky Lynch, but Charlotte Flair is the better of the two wrestlers. I'm sorry.
I can't agree with that. And after this past Tuesday, the promo Becky Lynch put on was
All right, let me ask you this,
and
though.
that's unbiased. I'm not joking on it.
WWE's trying to continuously push her as a heel. It's not working, though.
It's not. Even I even read some reports too that at Hell in a Cell, WWE was taking fan signs away that has supporting Becky Lynch on it. So that's ridiculous in my opinion. But I think Becky is kind of like this anti-hero at this point, where she's going to be like the Stone Cold Steve Austin type of character. I'm not going to say she's going to be exactly like him,
Right.
but that's the vibes you get off of her at this point.
Should be the Scottish Stone Cold.
Yeah.
Or whatever she is.
Irish.
Irish,
Get
yeah.
it right. You got to get that right.
Excuse me, the last kicker. I still fully expect Ronda and Charlotte, though, WrestleMania with both belts intact. I see Charlotte getting it back.
I don't think that's
We'll,
going to
we'll get into that later on in the year as we get closer, because what's the next big pay-per-view? Survivor Series?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
that's the big one.
All right, so we'll get back into wrestling later on in a couple months. Getting back to Love It or Hate It. So Clay Matthews, of course, the potential Hall of Famer for the Green Bay Packers, the linebacker, says that roughing the passer penalties are getting out of control this year. Love it or hate it.
I'm going to say, hey, you got to protect your quarterback at all costs.
All right.
Yeah, you got to protect them.
I get that. At the same time, though, I feel like quarterbacks can get away. Actually, offense in general can get away with way too much, and the game has steered so much towards offenses that it's just another case to be made that NFL will eventually be flag football, where you just can't tackle anybody. You just pull their flag. Because you can't, like, where do you tackle the quarterback now? You've got about this much space where you're allowed to hit the guy. Anything outside of that is a penalty now for roughing the passer, whether it be on time or whether it be a little late. Of course, that's a split decision to have to make by the refs. And I get it.
I agree. It does get a little crazy.
It's a
at
little
some point.
ticky-tacky
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And I get, like, you want to protect your quarterbacks. Those are your highest-paid players, the majority of the time. But still, man, you can't just let offenses just do whatever they want. Sometimes I can't even understand how they teach guys how to tackle anymore because you have to be so precise when you're doing it. Anyway, NBA news. Dwayne Wade says he's going to return to the Heat for his 16th and perhaps final season. Love it or hate it.
I love it. This is a potential first ballot Hall of Famer. If you want to give y'all to the Heat for the one last time, go out there and do it.
Yeah, love it or hate it.
Love it.
I love it too. I don't even think it's potential. I think he's first ballot all the way through. Perhaps having Shaq help that. Obviously, LeBron coming there helped that. But still, Dwayne Wade, a great talent. I'm glad that he's back in Miami. I'd like to see him finish out his career with Miami. I didn't like seeing him in a Bulls uniform. It just didn't look right. Going back to the NFL, here's one that you guys may find interesting. The Bills, Vontae Davis, quit and retired the NFL during halftime against the Chargers. Love it or hate it.
I'm going to say,
Can't make this stuff up, man.
I'm going to say hate it because why walk out on your team at the time they were losing and you knew when you signed this contract you came to a bad situation. So you just quit your team. That really tells you don't care. No team should never sign you no more after this because you need to go ahead and retire.
Well, I think he's done, yeah.
I'm going to say I love it because if you're going to leave, make an exit that's worth noting.
Well, he definitely did that. However, from the team aspect of it, I'm going to say hate it because if you're going to retire, if you're going to quit, first of all, quitters never win. But anyway, no more PSA after school special for me. But if you're going to retire, just wait till after the game. Tell the coaches you don't want to go back in. They sit you for the rest of the game.
Man.
Then you retire. Yeah, but you quit on your teammates. And like you said, if he wanted to come back right now, I don't know that there's a locker room in the NFL that would invite him in. Speaking of NFL, Buffalo Bills have this pregame thing called table slamming that they do, and it's exactly like it sounds. But fans that are caught table slamming at Bills games could face criminal charges. Love it or hate it, yeah. Again, can't make this stuff up, folks.
I say hate it because what in the world?
Yeah, I don't know.
Hate it.
I don't know what's going on. It's just reading here from Bleacher Report. Buffalo Bills supporters who partake in the fan base's trademark table slamming videos during the pregame tailgates could now face ejection from New Era Field and criminal charges.
What's it doing?
It's led to countless videos on social media. I think, they just get out of hand, people fighting, that sort of thing. Again, poor Buffalo. Anyway, keeping with the NFL, Ed Reed and Tony Gonzalez headline the 2019 Pro Football Hall of Fame nominees. Love it or hate it?
I love it because these are the two stalwarts of the NFL who elevate the game in their positions to where it is today.
All right.
I'm going to say love it.
Love it too. Two guys, first ballot all the way.
Oh, yeah.
There is a Georgia high school offensive line coach. Again, can't make this stuff up, folks. Who gives his linemen shots of maple syrup for making pancake blocks. And he keeps it in a holster on his side. Love it or hate
I'm
it?
going to say love it. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Love it.
I love it too. I've never heard of this, but it makes sense. They're pancake blocks. Give them shots of syrup. Why not? Keep it fun. The only thing I worry about is, you're playing football and you're a big guy in 95-degree weather. I don't know that I want to come off the sideline and get a shot of syrup.
Just imagine getting stuck up and you don't get all
it's
in.
too
Yeah.
hot. It'd be too hot.
Unless you want to ready to eat pancakes.
Finishing up with football and love it or hate it, Josh Gordon getting traded to the New England Patriots for basically nothing. Love it or hate it.
I love it. Tom Brady, you got a number one receiver to go to. Josh Gordon, go ball it out.
All right.
I'm going to say hate it because why were the Browns doing this?
I
They
don't
could
know.
have used this guy.
I'm going to say love it for the Pats and hate it for everybody else. Why didn't another team try to stop this from happening? This is the kind of moves that the Pats make that put them back in the Super Bowl year after year. Now, I know Josh Gordon's had some problems off the field, but when he's on the field, he's one of the best in the league.
Yeah, because he led one year. He led all NFL receivers over 1,600 yards.
Yeah, and that was like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
And now I'm not even going to pick the Browns to go all the way to the playoffs anymore.
Bye.
Click on that real quick. And then finally, our last one. The Baltimore Orioles on Tuesday became the first American pro team to wear jerseys with Braille lettering on the back. Tuesday was National Federation of the Blind Night at Oriole Park. So the Orioles having Braille on their jerseys. First pro team to do it. Love it or hate it.
I see what they did there. Love it.
Love it.
I'm going to say love it too. This is something different. Never seen this before on any sports franchise, much less in baseball. Baseball is all the time looking for new ways to bring different people in to spectate the sport. Perhaps this is one of them. I don't really fully get it why you've got Braille on there, but again, it's just something different to try, so why not try it? I'll say love it as well. And that's going to do it for your latest edition of the RO Sports Show, of course, brought to you by First Health Orthopedics. We also, of course, hope everybody was safe over the weekend. Pretty much, hopefully, everybody's got their power back by now. If not, of course, neighbors
for our
helping
area.
neighbors. So, what's that?
At least for our area.
And LB too.
The East Coast is still in a
Sure.
tight spot.
And of course, if there's still flooding in your area, keep your common sense, keep your wits about you. Do not try to drive through any of these flooded areas. It's not worth it. Obviously, if there's roads that are out, stay away from that. Anyway, I'm going to stop preaching. We appreciate everybody for watching and listening on all the different, many free ways that you can do that throughout the RO's platforms. So unless we're leaving anything out, Russell Parker, Jeremy McKenzie, I'm Matt Harrelson. We'll see you right next week, 5:30 on Thursday.